Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, DevOps meets CloudOps from commit to production in minutes. I'm Kevin Cochran, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at Vultr, and I couldn't be more thrilled to work with our partner, Cloud66, to bring today's webinar here with you today. Without further ado, let's kick off and begin, and I'll hand it over to my fine partner, Kasia. Kasia, over to you.
Everyone, and welcome to Vultr and Cloud66 first join webinar. Today we are talking about DevOps meet CloudOps. We will show you a demo how to get an application from commit to production in minutes. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items. So this webinar is recorded, so if you need to step out, don't worry. We will record this webinar and share with you once it's finished. And if you've got any questions, please drop them in our chat. We will answer them at the end. Let's welcome our speakers. Hi, I'm Kasia, a developer outreach at Cloud66. I work with developers to learn about their needs and also look at the ways how Cloud66 can make their lives easier. And I also work on the strategic partnership like integration with Vultr.
Hey everybody, I am DJ. I am the product marketing manager here at Vultr, responsible for all of Vultr's core cloud offerings and services. I work very closely with a lot of our strategic partners, such as Cloud66, to help showcase joint solution offerings that help better the lives of developers and businesses around the world. I would like to throw it over to Kosh now, who is the CEO of Cloud66.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kash Sajadi, and I'm co-founder and CEO of Cloud66. I'm also responsible for the product side of Cloud66, where we try to find out what developers want and put it in front of them so they can use it and make their lives easier. We are developers ourselves. I'm a developer with a developer background, so I hope that what we build is of great use to developers.
A quick overview on why Cloud66 and Vultr work together. We team up to offer an all-in-one solution to make deploying and scaling applications easier. With Cloud66 intuitive infrastructure management tool and Vultr running fast cloud servers, you can streamline your operation, which will allow you to focus on what really matters, growing your business. A quick agenda for today's webinar. We will start with giving a brief overview of Vultr and Cloud66. Next, we will show you a short demo on how to deploy an application on Vultr with Cloud66. And we will finish off with giving away some perks. So please stay with us till the end and we will answer your questions. Now over to you, DJ.
Thanks, Kasia. So Vultr, we are the world's largest privately held cloud platform with over 32 global locations, and we're constantly growing. In fact, we've recently just launched in Tel Aviv and Manchester, and you'll continue to see Vultr expanding across the world within the next year, within the next 5 years. We really have the ambition to become the biggest cloud provider out there. We currently serve around 1.5 million customers, of which they've deployed 50 million plus cloud servers across all of our data centers. And we offer a vast variety of solutions that I'll talk about here in just a second that actually helps our developers and businesses get up and running and start reaching customers that they never could before. One of the big benefits of the Cloud66 and Vultr partnership is that you can get right into our cloud compute infrastructure using Cloud66 management tools. And all that infrastructure is easy to use. It is high performance. You can use them for many workloads, whether you're doing something as basic as simple website hosting, or you've just developed the next Facebook, or you developed the next Twitter, and you're reaching a global audience. All of this starts at about $2.50 per month on Vultr's side, and we offer a vast amount of specs and plan types depending on actually what you need. Some of those are shared instances, some of those are dedicated instances, We have optimized solutions if you need more memory, or if you need more storage, or you just need faster CPU speeds, as well as we've recently launched into GPU acceleration. So now you can host NVIDIA data center GPUs, such as the H100, A100, A40, and A16, to actually spin up your machine learning and AI models, and start training all of your models on Vultr. All of this, again, is available in all 32 of our worldwide locations. And part of being a global infrastructure offering means we work a lot with bandwidth across the globe. We understand that you're going to be transferring data back and forth everywhere in the world. So when you first sign up for a Vultr account, you're actually going to get 2 terabytes of free global egress each month, just for having the account. And that is then pulled into any of your subscriptions. So if your subscription comes with 5 additional terabytes, you will then have access to 7 terabytes of pooled global egress bandwidth across your Vultr account, across any data centers. And just in the event that you start to go over and you start to see those overage fees tick in, we recently reduced our bandwidth overage rate to just 1 cent per gigabyte, no matter where you're at in the world. You could have a data center in Tokyo or Brazil or here in the States, and it's all the same price. And to really showcase that, I always like to highlight this little table that we created a little bit ago. You can see just from a handful of our data centers we picked. This is not a comprehensive list, but this was just some of the direct comparisons to AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. And you can see we are vastly cheaper, basically anywhere else in the world when it comes to those overage fees. And the thing to keep in mind with hyperscalers, they don't include bandwidth. All the bandwidth that you pay is paid per gigabyte from the start. So we've seen massive savings from customers who have migrated from AWS to Vultr just on bandwidth alone. And jumping to some of our solutions that we talk about, Cloud 66 definitely helps with the edge computing side and the SaaS side of things. So when you want to reach those customers that are far, far away from you, you can do so very easily. You can get right there in the customer's backyard so they don't experience high latency times, and everything loads super quickly for them. And I briefly mentioned that Vultr has recently expanded into the machine learning and AI space. We just announced a partnership with Domino Data Lab as well. That focuses on a one-click solution to get up and running with Domino Nexus on Vultr using the H100, A100, A40, and A16 GPUs. And on top of all of that, we have all these data centers across the world. And one of the big questions we always get is, what compliance offerings do you have for our business? And I've put a table here. It might be a little bit small for you, so I can direct you to the page on our website for Vultr compliance. But all of our data centers have varying levels of compliance between SOC 1, SOC 2, and even HIPAA. So if you're in a highly regulated industry and you need a data center that is already compliant, so you don't have to have the compliance certification process fall on yourself, we can help you with that and simplify that process. And now I would like to kick it over to Kosh to talk a little bit about what Cloud 66 has to offer. And then he will walk you into a demo as well.
Thanks, Jay. So a little bit about Cloud 66. We are a DevOps as a service company, and we tend to look at infrastructure from an application developer's point of view. What that means is, while all the building blocks of a cloud provider is very useful in order for you to build and host your application, we tend to look at those components like virtual machines, storage network, and other components that you might use from Vultr through the lens of an application developer and an application developer's requirements. Let's have a look at what we have here in terms of the services that we offer. This is not a comprehensive list. This is just a few of the highlights that we've chosen for this webinar. But as you develop web applications, mobile backends, or APIs, you always require things that sit on top of those building blocks of cloud providers and will deliver the services to your application in an application developer friendly way. An example of that is databases, to start with that. So databases are usually the stateful part of an application where they store data and then it can be retrieved. We are all familiar with the likes of Postgres or MySQL. Cloud66 will give you managed database services on top of Vultr, built on top of Vultr and built inside and inside your own account with Vultr, but it's managed by Cloud66 on servers that you can access, so it's not like a black box. And we do support many of the leading database providers or database servers around the world. So we do support Postgres, MySQL, Redis, MongoDB, and the list goes on to about 10 to 12 databases. Now, what that means is not only do we build, configure, and secure and provision a database server for you, we also take care of replication, backups, and offsite backups, as well as encryption and other things that comes with it. We don't stop there. We also, as I said, look at databases from an application point of view. So we also create the environment variables that you would need to use within your application to access those databases that are provided. All of that is accessible through an intuitive user interface that you can manipulate. We also provide those services through API and command line. As well as databases, there are other things that you would use to protect and scale your application. For example, firewalls. All leading cloud providers, including Vultr, will give you access to a firewall that you can manipulate and protect your application. We add on top of that by building a web application firewall that will protect your application from malicious attacks or other forms of security vulnerability checks that some agents on the open internet might try to exploit. We build these firewalls in a dynamic way. So as you scale your infrastructure, however you go about doing that, your firewalls are automatically and dynamically managed and reconfigured. So you don't need to worry about leaving ports open or opening ports in the middle of a flow when you try to scale a new server or add a new server to the roster of servers that host your application. Deploying an application is always something that sounds straightforward, but it can complicate things further down the line. For example, you might want to roll out a change to a subset of your users and not everyone until you're confident about the impact on performance or potential bugs that might be introduced into this release. So we do support deployment strategies and rollback strategies, blue-green, as well as canary releases that we provide through API, command line, and the UI in a very intuitive way. As well as that, sometimes we've seen our customers use Cloud66 to deploy the same application to multiple of the clients. For example, they might have single tenanted instances of their SaaS that they want to deploy on-prem for their clients. This is completely possible to do with Cloud66. So if you have a SaaS product that you want to deploy to different clients that run on different Vultr clouds, you can create things like deployment groups where you can click a button and your application gets deployed to multiple instances of your SaaS at the same time. We always provide integration and APIs for Slack, Zapier, and other integrations that you want to add to the automations that we provide, and it's all done natively with a simple API that's well documented. As well as that, we have VPN access for every stack and every application that we deploy. We understand that sometimes you want to have a private access channel to your servers in order to test, debug, investigate, or look at the latest code that you have deployed to your servers without opening it up to the general public before you want to give access to everyone. And that's why we build a WireGuard-based VPN access channel on every stack that we deploy that's easily configurable. You don't need to do anything in terms of the server side, and the client side of it is publicly available on every single platform that's there. It is an open standard that's now integrated into the upstream Linux. So sometimes on some operating systems, there's not even a need for installation of a client for this VPN. as well as deploying and managing the front end of your application, which always involves your web application, Nginx, some sort of load balancer, and some sort of application server. We do support background and scheduled jobs on the back end as well. A lot of times you might want to have long running or overnight jobs that send emails or round up reports, and those are usually running outside of your web thread. And that's why we have a comprehensive suite of tools and features that will cater for scheduled and background jobs of your applications. Everything that you see within Cloud66 is accessible by your team. We don't charge anything for teams or seats, as it is sometimes common practice in SaaS applications, because we believe if we add prices to teams, it sometimes can lead to security compromises, like sharing passwords between different team members. And security for us is one of the most important tenets of building Cloud66. So we always want to make sure that everything that we provide to our customers is very secure, safe, and according to the best standards of our industry. That's why we have ACL's fine-grained access control list, as well as RBAC role-based access control lists and teams for free for every single account that's created on Cloud66, and you can benefit from that. And not only that for your users, but also for your service accounts, where you can use that for automation without having to create dummy email accounts, for example, or dummy accounts just to use it as an API endpoint. We also provide windows into the logs of your application. Everything that's deployed, including your application and other components that we deploy on your servers to power your application, will generate logs, and we capture every single one of those logs and show it to you in real time, like a tail command, as you're familiar with on Linux, within the UI with search and context features. A lot of those features that I'm referring to right now, you will see as part of our demo, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see them in action. And the last point that I wanted to mention was the failover management system that we have. As you can imagine, you might want to have a kind of a disaster recovery or failover management for your application, where you deploy your application onto the different data centers in Vultr. And you want to switch traffic, data, and storage very quickly between one of those two stacks that are deployed in case of a disaster or in case of a failure. And we have all of that built into your system, into your account in the system, and you can just use that with a click of a button. Integration between Cloud66 and Vultr is using Vultr's very powerful API, and we've done it in a native way. What that means is that we can connect from Cloud66 to your account's Vultr API and build and scale out your servers, take care of things like not only creating the servers, provisioning them, accessing them, configuring your firewalls, but also taking care of things that are further than that, like tagging your servers so you can have a cost breakdown of your cloud costs per client, or project. You can download those as an Excel spreadsheet, and this is all possible with Vultr's API that we do that. As I mentioned, managed databases or application backups are always provided within every stack that you deploy with Cloud66, and it includes a long list of databases. One thing to mention here is that we don't build databases in a container or any sort of a generic thing. Every database that we do support, we support it in a native way. We have experts on the team that are familiar with that particular database, be it a document database like MongoDB or a key value database like Redis, or even search databases like Elastic, for example, that we deploy, manage in a native way, the way that you would have done it. We just make it easier for you to use and benefit from. As well as deploying your applications in a native way on top of a Vultr VM, we also can and do containerize your applications if you want to go down that route. What that means is that we take the code from the Git repository, and that's could be Git, GitHub, GitLab, or any other Git server that you use, and we put them into containers. An example of is a Docker container. We build it for you, and that build process happens on either Cloud66 servers, or it could be on your own servers, and we deploy that onto Kubernetes containers that we build and manage for you on your Vultr cloud. If you choose not to deploy with containerized approach, we can deploy the same application in a non-containerized way directly onto the VM if that's what you prefer to do. And this, I would imagine, is useful for those workloads that are not necessarily CPU intensive, like the AI or ML workloads that require GPUs, or things that are not necessarily best catered for with containerized structures. Everything that you see in Cloud 66 is available for every account. We don't have tiered or pay for per feature cost structure. So you can, when you sign up with Cloud 66 and you deploy application, you get the benefit from the web application firewall, different rollout strategies, failover protection, and management, dynamic firewalls, and everything that I mentioned and more for free as part of your account. So we want to make sure that you benefit from everything that we offer without having to always be conscious and worrying about cost. So a little bit about the cost and how the total cost of ownership for the solution can be for you. Here we have a comparison between Vultr dissolution and AWS. So you can have an idea as to what that cost is going to be for the total ownership cost of deploying an application with Cloud 66 and Vultr. As you can see, benefiting from not only the quality of a cloud provider like Vultr, but on top of that, having the services we have, we mentioned as part of the DevOps as a service Cloud 66 offering together, the total cost of ownership for a typical application, and we used a sample of different applications that we see, or application setups that we see on our cloud providers. We use that as an example, and you can see here, this is by far not only more price competitive, but also benefits from the quality of Vultr and all the added benefits that you get from Cloud 66. This is based on as I said, a sample application. Obviously, your type of application might be different, but regardless, I'm very confident that however you decide to deploy your application, the total cost of ownership is going to be way cheaper than any other alternative that you have out there. So here, I wanted to show you all the kind of different features that we mentioned through a demo. This is a demo that will walk you through deploying a sample application all the way from coding a Git repository all the way to a Vultr account. I'm going to use my own Vultr account for this, but obviously in your case, it will be your Vultr account, and we'll go from Git to cloud in less than 20 minutes. So as I said, Cloud 66 takes care of 3 stages of your application deployment: build, deploy, and maintain. Let's just quickly go through the build phase, and then we move on to the other stages. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to deploy a Rails application, which is not going to be containerized, and we can do the containerized version as well. We can have a look. This is the dashboard for Cloud 66. I have 3 applications already deployed, but I'm going to deploy a new one for the purpose of this demo. And we're going to start by going through new application. The way Cloud 66 works is that it connects to GitHub on one end and then your Vultr account on the other. We pull the code out, we analyze it, looking for signals that will tell us what is the best makeup for infrastructure setup, and we deploy it onto Vultr. You can bring GitHub, GitLab, any GitHub server that you have your source code there. We also have a GitHub application that just makes things a bit easier to deploy. But again, if you have your source in Git, you're good to go. We have a Rails app that I want to use for the test or this demo. It's a fake stock ticker dashboard that I can deploy. Choose the branch, choose the environment, give it the name, and press analyze. So what happens right now is the code's being taken out, analyzed for signals to tell us what it is and what makes it up. And then you'll see the results of that analysis. So production was the environment we chose. It detected that we are running this version of Rails and this version of Ruby. I'm not using any specific Rails application server, so we're going to default on Fusion Passenger, which is a application server for Rails. Again, it also detected that I'm using 2 database types for my application, MySQL and Redis, and it will help me set it up. We also have a Docker file in there, but that's not necessary. You can deploy this as a native Rails application if you want, without any containers in sight, or you can deploy it as a containerized application, which we can get into. In this case, I'm just going to ignore the Docker file and not deploy it as a container and go with native though. As we look
into an infrastructure from an application developer's point of view, it's very important for us to bring all the parameters that are needed to make an infrastructure work for an application developer. And this includes things like environment variables. For example, as we've detected that we have MySQL and Redis as part of the infrastructure setup that's required to power this application, we also create and generate the environment variables that you need to make that happen. Again, because this is a Rails application, there are specific things to Rails that we create. So we know that for a Rails application to run, you need an environment variable called node-env, so that's that, and a secret key base, which you can change if you want to. All of this, again, is to take care of everything that's needed to deploy your application onto an infrastructure without you worrying about these intricacies. Once you're happy with the environment variables, I think you're good to go. You go through the Rails or a framework-specific setup, which we're not going to get into. This is again about secrets management for this particular framework, Rails. Again, that's not very important for the purpose of this demo, but as you can see, we very much understand the deployment, the framework that we are deploying. So we want to help your application developers to kind of see things that they are familiar with from an application point of view. Now I'm going to choose my favorite cloud and the data center that I have for it, the size of the server that I want to deploy to. Well, that's going to take a long time because it's a single CPU for an application like that. And then the last thing I need to choose is the makeup of our application. So our philosophy is that we deploy the skeleton of an application and then you can scale it out as you wish. So the best way is to just go with one application server, one for every database, because that's the best way to go about having your application deployed for production. But if you want to save money for a non-production environment, you can share it, share the servers if you want, or if you have existing, say, database like MySQL, manage MySQL from another vendor, an external vendor, or a Redis vendor, you can also bring those. So in this case, I'm just going to share everything together and click Start Deploying. So what's going to happen right now is, as I said, code's going to be pulled out, Vultr API is going to be called, servers are going to fire up, those servers are going to be primed, provisioned, configured, secured, patched, restarted if needed. Everything that you need to do to get your application up and running on that server is going to happen. And by the end of it, you will have your stack and application up and running on Vultr in about 20 minute time. Now, we have 15 minutes for this, so I don't want to spend all the 15 minutes waiting for a thing to happen in 20 minutes. So let's just go back to the one that I've prepared earlier, like any good cooking show. This is the same Rails application. Let's just have a look at the site that's up and running. So this is how it looks like. It's a simple fake stock portfolio app that we've developed. And as you can see, there's a URL for c6.me that we create, or CNAME that we create for every application that you deploy, but you can point your own CNAME to this. This is running on my Vultr servers. This is running on Vultr Los Angeles, Southern California data center for Vultr, and it's performing really well on a few servers. So now that I've built it, let's just go and see if we can scale it. I'm going to click on web, and I'm running it on 3 servers. So I've basically deployed it and scaled it up before this, just for the purpose of this demo. Usually when you do this the first time, it's only going to have 1 server. Okay, so let's see how easy we can scale this up. I'm going to click on a web server, choose the size of the server that I want to scale it up onto, how many of those servers I want, click add server, and get it started. That's as simple as that. I can turn off web traffic for each one of these servers that I want, because I might want to take them offline to investigate and SSH into or whatever I want to do. And that's basically isolates the server, so I can test things on it, and I can turn it back on, just as simple as that. All of this is load balanced and SSL secured. So how do I add a load balancer? I've done this on this particular application just for the purpose of speed and in the interest of time. But basically what you do is that you just go to load balancers and you create a new load balancer. In this case, on Vultr, we create an HA proxy load balancer, and you get an address for it, which is the one that we just checked. And that's basically it. That's all it takes to balance load across different servers. You can also have a look at the stats of the HA proxy. This is privately available to you, not publicly. And that's it. That's all it takes to deploy the application onto Vultr and have a load balance and have a load balancer there. The next thing that you probably want to do is to add an SSL certificate. That's super easy. We have 3 options for that. One is to give us the name of the CNAME you have. I don't own this. I'm just going to use it as an example, but we use Let's Encrypt to generate this SSL certificate, and you can force it to be SSL terminated at the load balancer and the rest of the traffic not SSL if you want to. You can use wildcard SSL certificates from Let's Encrypt. You can just add your DNS provider, and we do support a lot of DNS providers to set it up. We take care of setup, renewal, and all the warnings and everything else that comes with it. So you're always going to have Let's Encrypt SSL certificates, or if you want to bring your own SSL certificates issued by any other CA, you can just bring your own as well. And that just basically takes care of your traffic security at the SSL level. Next thing I want to move on to is traffic. So there are very simple, basic things that everyone wants to do. For example, redirecting HTTP to HTTPS, it's just a checkbox, you do that. And what we do essentially is we go back to Nginx that's installed on the server, and we configure the Nginx configuration to make this happen. For example, adding a ... or removing it is again another simple thing that a lot of people want to do. And that's basically how it works. It's just by modifying the Nginx configuration behind that. Now, before I move on to the rest of these, I'm going to go back to my servers. And I'm going to have a look at this, what we call custom config. As I told you, so we have Nginx deployed on this server. We don't want to expose it as an entity and a component that you have to deal with. But if you really want to deal with Nginx and have a very specific configuration that you want, we always have, for every component that we install on your servers, we have its configuration files available to you like this. If you're familiar with Nginx, you will recognize this as an Nginx, and you'll see these specific templating features within that will, when you click preview, will be applied onto the configuration and result in the end configuration. So you can basically go back, edit your template however you want, press preview, make sure that you like what you see, and then commit it into a Git repository, which is provided behind the scenes, all version controlled. You don't need to even use this web-based editor. You can just pull it out and use your favorite editor, and it goes to commits to servers. So what we want to do here is that we want to encourage your team to encourage best behavior and good behavior in terms of infrastructure maintenance by your team. You can always SSH to a server and then find this Nginx file and then modify it and commit it if you want. But a couple of things are going to happen. First of all, your servers are going to be inconsistent. One of them is going to have a different one. So you have to reapply the same config everywhere else. It's not going to be version controlled. And also another thing that's going to happen is that we're going to send an alert to your admin to say that one of the files and one of the services be modified without going through the proper channels. And this will allow, again, encourage good behavior. Another thing that happens here is that before this gets into production, it gets tested on the server itself to make sure that it doesn't impede traffic and bring the whole sites down. So this is another test that's running. But again, this is like full control that you can have on your configuration. Now, this is done for every component that's installed. For example, if I go to load balance, as you saw, we have HA proxy here. I can go and have a look at the HA proxy config, custom config. And I can do exactly the same thing with any other component that I have. For databases, I also have the same one, which we will get to. Now, going back to traffic, as you can see, all of these can be done by modifying your Nginx. That's actually exactly what we do. But for high frequency used actions, we just bring them up onto the UI. For example, traffic filters, you can filter traffic based on IP address or even a URL that contains IP addresses as a file, or have a web application firewall that's given to you for free on every application based on a country, or allow traffic to only go through load balancers except when they come, for example, from your office or your developers so they can test things. Again, another one of examples of those things that we bring up, the high frequently used configurations to the UI is CORS. Things that application developers value a lot when they add, for example, a web custom font into the application, they usually need to change the CORS settings. We also have a web application firewall that's automatically enabled, and it will apply a bunch of basic rules to protect your application from malicious attacks and malicious activity, which you can enable by default as you wish. Okay, so moving on quickly to data sources. As you saw, my app had MySQL and Redis. So we've set this up as the server. This is a server that I have. It's a MySQL server. As you can see, I have access to the credentials. I can just SSH to it or connect my favorite database client to it and just look at my data. You also have monitoring on the disk. You can alert on the disk side. You can have a look at the VM metrics, the basics of it, as well as that, specifics of the component that is installed. For example, in this case, a MySQL server, the number of connections, queries, and slow queries, and everything else. You have charts for that. These are VM metrics that are available on all servers within a different kind of time window. You can also go deeper into this and have the databases, as in logical databases on a server modified. I can add a new database if I want, and say which users have access. These are database users, not Linux users. These are database users that I have access. I can grant access to a new database, change the password, or add a new database user. So it's kind of like a database admin dashboard on top of my database that's there as well. Now that I have the server, I can scale it. So I can create a replica, choose the size of the server that I want for my replica, and just click add server, and I'm going to have replication. This is native MySQL replication that's there. It is replicated and monitored for any drift between the replica and the master. Same again for Redis. You can do the same thing exactly there. You can create Redis replication with a single click. Again, databases when it comes to Redis are slightly different. There are no databases in this case for Redis, and there are no users for it. But again, you have metrics that are specific to Redis server. For example, operations per second or total keys, which are Redis specific things that are there for you to see. You can add new data sources, and there's a range of other database types that we do support, and you can have them as managed on your own servers on Vultr. Moving on quickly to workers. So these are the non-web things that you can have. For example, you're going to have backend servers that will do other things other than just serving web. For example, you can have workers in terms of proc files. If you're familiar with Heroku and the way it works, you can have proc files that have backup things like sending an email overnight, or back office jobs that are running. And those are both worker servers and jobs. You can have rake task, which is a Rails specific, or a shell job that you want to run. You give it the name of the server that you want to run it on, the name of the job, the command that you want to run, the frequency, which could be anything, up to a cron or a on-demand one. And it will not only run it, but also keep the logs of its running, and the last 10 runs status for you, so you can check everything that happens, including deployment, all the operations, scaling, everything is audited. You can see what's happened, who's changed it, as well as that we have a wide range of notifications that you can have a look at and get notified when a job fails or a deployment fails. And this is a long list of everything you can get notified by on Slack, email, HipChat, webhook, browser, and all of it is available, as well as these on API, and the API and the command line tool that we have. So it's a very, very flexible system that you can use for everything. Quickly moving on to live logs as one of the coolest features that we have. So we are not a log storage facility. There are lots of good vendors out there that will take care of that for you. But a lot of times we see our customers want to have a look at the logs as they are being produced. And this is the best way you can do that. So as you click these, for everything that we deploy, for database, application, and backend workers or the web servers, we add the log file onto this list, so you can actually have a look at it on every single server, and you can see them in action. As traffic hits your site, you can look at the context above and below the line that you want. You have search facility that you can have, and this will allow you like a real-time tail of everything you have on every server you have, all combined and aggregated into one stream of logs. Think of it as a super tail that you can have that will help a lot with your team's deployment and debugging. Okay, now I know there's a lot here that I haven't mentioned. I'm just going to quickly jump onto a containerized application that I have here. And that is the one that I've deployed with Kubernetes. It's a Go application that's deployed in a container. I can change the number of containers that are running my application. The flow to deploy it is exactly the same thing. The only difference is instead of deploying it natively onto a VM, we build and manage a Kubernetes cluster for you, which is patched, upgraded automatically, and your application is built into container images on our servers, on a set of powerful servers we have called BuildGrid, with a provided free Docker image registry that will host those images. Again, you can replace any part that you want. You can build it yourself, bring your own images, or have your own registry and have all of that feed into this cluster. One quick thing about this is, let's just jump right into one of the services that I have. And here is all the containers that are running on my Kubernetes cluster. I can just shell into the container right from here, from the web, have a look at anything I want, including top, or better still, I can create a debug console so it doesn't disrupt any of the existing containers that are running. It creates another container alongside those with the same code. So again, I can just have a look at everything that I want, debug, and get out. Everything else about this is exactly the same. So as you can see, whether you have a native application or you have a containerized application, you have everything exactly look and feel the same with specific details that are different. For example, this one obviously a containerized one. So you have, something, the concept of an image, which is built, but everything else is exactly the same across the board for containerized and non-containerized application, which will help a lot if you want to bring a legacy application into the containerized and Kubernetes world gradually. So you can create two applications, one containerized, one non-containerized, and then move traffic gradually between the two. One last thing I want to mention before I stop is networking. So as I said, again, looking at infrastructure from an application point of view for us is very important to bring the security and everything else that you have for infrastructure, but is in a way that's consumable for application developers. One of those is, for example, what we call the dynamic firewall. So instead of having dealing with IP addresses or ports, what you can do, you can say any traffic, for example, coming from my Rails server to my Kubernetes servers on my SQL port is allowed. And that what it does is that from an application point of view, you are opening up essentially a firewall port. But from an operational point of view, when someone goes and scales up your Rails server group to deal with more traffic, you don't need to touch your firewall again. This automatically updates the firewall everywhere in any cloud-based firewall that you might have or any server-based firewall that you have. We update it automatically based on the dynamic nature of each one of these groups that interact with each other. So that was a very, very quick overview of a lot of features that we have and a lot of things that can help you deploy your applications to Vultr and take care of the build phase, the deployment phase, and the maintenance phase of your infrastructure, of your application. But there's a lot more to it. If you have any specific questions, please mention them on the chat. I'll be more than happy to answer.
Thank you, Kash. That was great stuff. If you would like to learn more how Vultr and Cloud 66 fit in your infrastructure, check out our solution brief. The link for the solution brief you can find in our chat. And if you are new to Cloud 66 and Vultr, take advantage of our free credits that we give away to celebrate our partnership. Together, we give away $750 of free credits, $250 from Cloud 66 with 3 months expiration date, and $500 of free credits from Vultr, valid for 30 days. You can learn how to claim those credits from our help page, and the link to help page you can find in our chat. And now let's answer your questions. We will have a look at the questions you have submitted in a chat, and we'll get back to you in just a second. And if we run out of time and don't get to your question, please feel free to reach out to us via Twitter using a handle @Vultr or @Cloud66, or contact us directly via email, hello@cloud66.com, or go to Vultr page and click on the Contact Us button. We will be happy to assist you. Thank you.
Great. And thank you so much, Kasia. And everyone, thank you so much for joining today's webinar here. Unfortunately, we are running a little over our originally allotted time. So for those of you that have asked questions in the chat, we will be following up with you directly. And for the rest of you, thank you so much once again for attending today's webinar. And we look forward to engaging you in the future with our free credit program and seeing you at future webinars and events. Thank you.